What is going on, everybody? It's your host of Recover Out Loud, Sean. And before you get into this episode, let's go ahead and hear from friends of the show. Enjoy.
Hey guys, this is your host of the Mental Health Movement podcast, Voice for the Voiceless, Chris. I'm here to let you guys know of my podcast that is now on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. You can find me at Fellow Traveler MH on TikTok. You can find me at the Mental Health Movement Pod on Instagram. And on Facebook, you can find me at the Mental Health Movement. Hopefully, you guys can tune in, join the group, join the family, help us break the stigma in mental health. Much love to you guys, and be gentle with yourselves.
Welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode number 77. I'm super sorry for the way that this is going to come out, guys. The second video didn't even play for the show. So hey, we're just gonna fucking roll with it because that's what we do here. We just roll with the punches. And technology, like I said, is our best friend, worst ally. Anyways, today we've got an awesome guest. His name is Tim. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I can't complain, man. Can't complain. Just running around like a madman today, and then trying to fit everything in. Trying to make a circle fit into a square.
Yeah, every day pretty much.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, Tim, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, my name's Tim Pangburn. I'm a tattoo artist. I work outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I own 2 shops, and I am also a recovering alcoholic. And I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 2, an anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and ADHD. So I manage a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. You got a lot going on, friend.
And I got 5 kids. So
Hey, that's why you got that white and the gray in your beard, bro.
absolutely. That all came after the little one. Craziest.
Right? I have all girls. So I have a biological daughter. I got a stepdaughter, and that is why my beard is going gray, man.
I got 3 teenage daughters. So, yeah, and then 2 little boys on top of it.
Nice. So, I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about the tattooing portion, but I find that very interesting. I have some art. I just got this done. But when did you start tattooing?
When I was 19, well, I did my first when I was 17, almost 18. I got my hands on like a mail order kit, which was a terrible idea. I did some awful tattoos on a couple of my friends and then dropped it because I was like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And then I got an apprenticeship when I was 19. So I've been tattooing for 25 years now.
Nice. What about tattooing do you love?
There was a lot. I got into it because I thought I could party, but that first it wasn't true, and then it was too true. But I like the freedom that it's given me. It's I make good money. I do art. I have time to spend with my kids. When I'm not working like a maniac. But I have flexibility, and I've always liked that. I'm my own boss, so
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. I know and I'm pretty sure you might feel the same way, but there's like a certain level of pain when that needle goes into your skin, the endorphins get released, and it's just like something about that experience is completely different. I don't know if it's the pain associated with the pleasure. What do you kind of have an understanding of that?
I hate getting tattooed.
Really?
I mean,
You got tattoos all over the place, my friend.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things like the more I get them, the less I like it, the more I want. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
As I get older, I feel like they hurt more, but it's like I'm still tolerant of them. I mean, it's like you want a tattoo, you deal with it, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't like the first half hour, and I don't like the last half hour, but the middle's not too bad.
yeah. The healing process sucks too.
Yeah, yeah, the itchiness is the worst.
Yeah, yeah. I just got my hand done probably a month and a half, 2 months ago, and like my hand swelled up so bad right here and on the bone, it was
I had, my,
insane.
I had both my hands done, had them lasered twice, and then had them redone.
Oh,
Terrible. My
yeah.
hand through. I'm done.
That's crazy. So, have you ever had anybody come into into one of your shops and be like, "Hey, man, just freehand something"?
Oh yeah. Well, I hardly ever work without any kind of drawing. I've done that a
Mhm.
few times, but I actually freehand with markers on the skin almost everything I do. Probably
Nice,
95% of my work. So it's
nice.
been something I've done for years. I feel like I just get I don't know, just kind of running with it. I get a better result out of it most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I'd like to give. I only put minimal input into what I want, and I let the artists have the free reign with what they want because they're the artists. They know best.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I always do when I get tattooed by anybody. I just kind of give them my idea and do it how you want. They're like, "Is this okay?" I'm like, "Dude, whatever you want to do, go for it."
Yeah, you are the artist. You're putting your masterpiece on me.
Yeah, that's how I always look at it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna dive into it, man. What was it like in your active addiction, or when did it start for you?
Uh, it was. I used to find it hard to pinpoint a period that it would have like been a beginning for it, but as I've gotten further along in recovery, I've realized that I was an alcoholic from the minute I picked up a drink. Um, I first drank when I was 15, and I drank a 6 pack. And then my second time I drank a pint of whiskey. And the third time I drank most of a fifth in maybe a half hour and ended up in a hospital.
Whew.
That was the first 3 times I drank. And I just never learned moderation after that. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it from the beginning. But I feel like the signs were there even younger. I remember my uncle taught me to play poker when I was 12, and I lost $1, and I was searching in the cushions. So I feel like somebody should have been like, "This is a sign." Like,
Yeah, it's here. It is. Here it is.
yeah. But the with the drinking, once I kind of got past that, those few things, I didn't drink for a little while because I was like, "Oh man, I went to the hospital." And then when I started again, like a year later, and basically that was my drinking career. It was like I'd be okay, then I'd get out of hand a little bit, and then I'd go overboard and something bad would happen. And then I might slow down or stop briefly. And I just lather, rinse, repeat for, 20 years. And that's how my whole drinking career went.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a veteran, and so like I say from the first sip that I ever had, like I was addicted, just like you said. But I became a professional drinker along with a professional soldier, dude. Like, it was just ingrained into me, become a functional alcoholic so that nobody asks a question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I functioned really, I was high functioning alcoholic for a long time. I was able to keep drinking and work just separate enough that, like, I wasn't drinking at work for a while.
Yeah,
uh, and I just functioned like that. I was drunk every night. I was hungover every day, and did my work. And it wasn't until the last year or so of my drinking that I turned into an all day drinker. That's when I was, getting up in the morning. I'd have a few. I get sick every morning. Have a few, you level me out. Have a few at lunch, and then start drinking when I got done work.
yeah,
Uh, and yeah, I thought I was good at it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So once that part of your brain kicked in and you started like needing it, how did it affect your health?
Um,
I'm here. I'm listening.
I can't, I don't know. It was like it had been so long since I had not had some kind of substances in me. Because I mean, I drank religiously, and
Yeah.
pot and take pills and stuff. So it was like I was. I mean, aside from like a month or two here and there, like I was always under the influence. So
Yeah.
it was like I didn't notice how it was affecting my health, you know? Other
Yeah.
than like the last year or so, I thought I was having like mini heart attacks all the time. Like I was like, oh my God, my chest, I'm gonna die. But it didn't stop me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What so at what point did you like look at yourself and say, I need some help? Like this shit's getting out of hand.
Well, there were a few times I thought that over the years. You know, most people don't quit the first time they try. So I had tried a few times over the course of maybe 6 years or so, and I might get a month, might get a few weeks. One time I got almost 6, but I was miserable. Um, but it was for me, it was my last night out was my final straw. Now I was in the midst of like a mass exodus of artists quitting my shop, and I went out and I realized normally I just have a few drinks and drive home, but I realized I had had too many. I was like, you know what, I can't drive home, and that was a lot for me to say that. Like I can't drive home, and so I told my fiance, she's my wife now, she's stuck around. Told my fiance I can't make it back, and then I closed out this bar, and I was like, I'm going to the after hours bar, and I headed down into South Philly. It was about 6-7 miles away. Headed down into South Philly, and I was walking down the street and I talked to somebody on the street, and then I was on the corner at 6 a.m. So I don't know how. I don't know if I made it to the after hours. My wallet was gone. My phone was dead. Uh, I don't know what happened. So with no phone, no wallet, and 6 miles from my car, I had to you know, start walking, and it was a long walk. It's sun coming up, and you have a lot to think about. And I was walking past, or as I was walking, I wasn't walking past you. As I was walking, I could see the Ben Franklin Bridge, one of the big bridges into Philly from Jersey.
Mhm.
And see the Ben Franklin Bridge, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to jump off the bridge. Like I had dealt with a lot of suicidal ideation. I'd had attempts in the past, and I was like, I can't do this. Everybody's going to be better off. I'm a fucking disaster, and that I was committed to that. And then as I got closer to the bridge, I realized I was like, wait, my phone's dead. I can't just jump off the bridge without like texting or emailing my fiance to let her know what's happening so she's not worried. Like,
Yeah.
but thinking because I was thinking, I'm like, it's gonna take them days to find me. I knew people that jumped off bridges. Like it takes days to
Yeah.
find people. So I thought if I didn't tell her, that's selfish. Like
Yeah.
in that skewed thought process. So I didn't jump. And I made it back to my car, and I made it back to my house. And when I got home, she had all my stuff packed up in the living room. So she was ready to throw me out. And when I walked in, I just fell on the ground. I was just crying, and I was telling her I need help. I have a problem. And
Yeah.
I told her like I'm gonna hurt myself if I don't get help. And she helped get me a bed in a dual unit. Um, and I was there for 9 days. And even when after they got me detoxed, I still was thinking, man, I can't drink liquor anymore. And then
Yeah.
a few more days in there, I realized I was like, I can't drink it all anymore. Like I can't do this. I'm gonna end up dead.
Yeah.
I was in there 9 days, and then I did 6 months outpatient, and I haven't really looked back since then.
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about those periods of time where you would reel it back and or you would stop drinking, but you pick it right back up. I've done that before, many times where it's like I was always sober for somebody else, or I wasn't even sober. We'll just call it what it was. I was dry drunk,
Yep.
but I was dry drunk for somebody else, and then when that person left, like I had nothing else to be sober for. Is that kind of like where you were?
It was similar. Um, I mean, I definitely had that mindset. I think the one time after I got a DUI, I was sober for close to 6 months. And the first couple months, I was really about it. I was like, "This is good." And then I started, those thoughts started creeping in, where I'm like, you know what? It's just about control. Like I can't control.
Yeah.
I'm not in control, and if I get in control, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
You know. Uh, but it was this time was probably the fourth time that I really like earnestly tried to get sober. And the other times, one time was when I was with my ex-wife, and She told me, "You're just as much of an asshole as when you're drinking. You might as well be drinking." And I was like, "Okay." You know,
All right.
that was that. I was like a month sober. I was like, "Well, if you say so." And then there was a couple other times, the 6 months. There was another time it was a month. Um, but yeah, that's what it was. I was always doing it for other people.
Yeah.
I was doing it for my wife or doing it for my kids, or and it wasn't until I actually wanted to do it for myself that I was able to make it stick. Which is it's weird because people that don't understand it are like, well, why can't you do it for your kids? Think about your kids. And I'm like, it's not about the kids. It's about me.
Yeah.
It sounds selfish, but it's true.
Yeah, recovery is a very selfish program. My story to recovery is, I ended up catching an assault charge that was alcohol related, and I was standing in front of a judge in a treatment court, and the judge said, you've tried many times before, like what's different now? And I was like, well, I got to do it for myself, because if they leave, I got nobody else to be fucking sober for, and I'm gonna die, right? And I don't want to die. So yeah, I can resonate with that, man. And like you said, there's people that just don't understand, that are like, oh well, why can't you do it for your wife, or for your kids, or for your employment? Because eventually, to some degree, they're gonna go. They're gonna disappear. What do I have left?
Yeah, you're always stuck with yourself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're the only one you really have to live with.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So you were explaining when you were in South Philly, and you were on the corner, and then you were thinking contemplating suicide. Was that like your ultimate rock bottom, or was there like something else that was like, fuck, this is my rock bottom?
That was my, I would call that my rock bottom, in the sense that like I was ready to get help.
Yeah,
I'd say there's plenty of moments I would consider rock bottom moments. You know, I've
yeah,
done a lot of things I'm ashamed of, and I own that now. Like, there are things I did, and I know it. Um, and but overall, I guess, I mean, as far as like the saying of rock bottom in order to get sober, then yeah, that was my rock bottom. But there's plenty of moments along the ride that were.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, and like the thing that baffles me is like going into AA. I don't like to intrusively talk about certain programs, because everybody's recovery looks different. But going back to AA and the promises, where it says you'll look back on past mistakes and not regret them, right? Or you'll be able to own them. Long story short, I mean long version short. I used to be, dude. I used to look back and I was like, man, I was a real piece of shit, and I felt like shame and guilt and like all this. And now I can say, from perspective where I'm at now, I can look back and be like, hey, that was a phase of my life, and I've already made amends for him. Is that kind of where you're at?
Sort of. Because I still feel guilt and I still feel shame over some of the things I've done, but uh, I look at it as, without having those experiences, I would not be where I'm at right now. And if any of it looked different, if any of it looked different, then this right here would look different, and
Yeah.
it might not be in a position that it's in now. So my life might not be as good. I might not have the perspective.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the perspective I have now, and I wouldn't have it if I didn't have those experiences.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I say all the time, I've had a few people ask, if I could go back and change anything, would I? And I said no. Oh, because I don't know that I would be right here where I'm at now, doing what I'm
Yeah,
doing now.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I look at it. Because I mean, in a like, if the world's perfect sense, like, yeah, I'd take back all kinds of things, but that's not how life works. That's not how things work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you go into detox, and you start getting sober. What does it look like moving forward for you after that?
Um, well, I remember talking to my wife on the phone when I was in, and she was like, and I was like apologizing and stuff. And she's like, "Look, I don't know if I'm sticking around. Like, I can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
And I was like, "You don't have to." I was like, "If you go, that's my fault, and I had to deal with it. But I got to do this for myself." and I think that helped her stick around. Uh, and getting out, there was a lot of humility coming out. I was humbled by the whole thing. It knocked ego out of me. I, I just gotten this acceptance real fast of where I was and what my future was going to have to look like in order to stay like that. Uh, I like I said, I was in this mass exodus of artists. I had like 6 or 7 people quit over the course of a few months. Uh, in hindsight, a lot of it, I understand a lot of it was because of my drinking.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't get it at the time. Didn't know why people are leaving. Oh, they're assholes, this and that. But when I look back now, I'm like, they were doing what they had to do to get out of a bad situation. Because, I mean, I'm bipolar also, and I was unmedicated at the time. They didn't know what to expect out of me. Tim's walking fast today. Is he angry or excited? What they expect out of me day to day. So, I was real humbled when I came out. A lot of people had left, and a few more people left after I got out. Nobody believed I was going to stay sober, but I given them no reason to. I didn't given anybody a reason to.
Yeah.
My wife didn't think I was going to stay sober. But just day by day, I was proving to her that I'm not going to drink again. And that first year, I felt this huge hit to my creativity. I felt like I couldn't do things because I was so used to doing it all drunk that I wasn't painting, wasn't drawing. I played a lot of video games, but I took it as self-care. I was like, I'm just relaxing. I'm just going to relax, and if it makes me relax, I'm just going to do that. I went to IOP for 6 months, and there was, so that was several days a week. I was there, group therapies and stuff like that. I went and saw my therapist weekly. I went to 4 or 5 AA meetings every week for about a year. And that was my first year out. That was my first year. I did a lot to try to keep myself in environments that were conducive to sobriety.
Yeah.
Luckily, a couple of the guys that quit were the big partiers in my shop. The 2 guys that left after I got out, like they were. I don't know if I'd say they were as bad as me, but like they got so, and they talked about it a lot. So it was actually a blessing that they left because I couldn't be around that. I didn't know at the time I couldn't be around people like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Your story of recovery, like the programs that you started doing sound like just like mine, dude. I started doing IOP and was going to counseling and was doing the AA thing multiple times a week because that's what kept me sober. That's what, on top of that, the accountability of being in a treatment court. But yeah, man. What was the most beneficial part of your early recovery?
My therapist. Yeah, my therapist, because I found that in IOP it was very strict and regimented. So it was like they treated us all the same. And it's like, I understand you're treating people with addictions. There's your textbook how addiction works, but they're telling me things like, I was supposed to get married that year. They're like, you have to have a dry wedding, and I'm like, I'm not I'm not doing that to my guests. Like my
Yeah.
guests drink. Like I'm gonna let them drink. And they're like, well, you have to get rid of the vanilla extract in your house. I'm like, I am not going to drink vanilla extract. And they're like, you might. I was like, some people might. I am not drinking vanilla extract.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was still learning my boundaries with things, but it's like, there's bottles of wine in my house. I'm okay with that. I know some people aren't, but they didn't treat us like individuals there. So it was, I kind of butted heads with them, but I would be able to go back and bounce it off my therapist, and we could talk things through. And I felt similar with AA because I could never find a sponsor. I tried, and I'd get a sponsor, but I wouldn't click with them. Um, and I was having with my work schedule, it's like hard to find meetings, but there's a clubhouse not too far from me, so I was able to go there. But the meetings I could make, I wasn't finding people, I clicked with, and I was getting kind of like shallow sobriety out of a lot of people there. Just keep coming, and I'm like, well, I have a question about this, and they're like, don't think too hard, and I'm like, I have questions. I'm thinking. I can't help it. You know.
Yeah.
So I was getting a lot of that, and so I'd have to go back to my therapist. So I ended up walking through. I didn't do the steps in order. I, but I ended up walking through all of it with my therapist, and he helped me a lot. I went to him for 8 years, so he's the one that helped me the most, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I know, especially like if you get a counselor that you click with, or your therapist that you click with, and that'll work for you and work with you. It works amazing. Like it sounds bad to say on here, but I had to fire a counselor because I wasn't clicking with her. Right, like I was, sitting there and I was trying to express how I feel. And then she's like, well, how does that make you feel? And I'm like, well, angry because you keep asking me that question. um,
There's
but then
nothing wrong with firing a counselor.
no,
Like that's for your health. Like
yeah,
if you don't feel good with it.
yeah. And then I ended up getting a counselor that was a veteran, and he was in recovery for alcoholism. So I was like, you and I, we're a stick like glue, friend. And yeah, so it's great, and I would advocate for anybody to get a counselor that like works for you and works with you, and that you can relate to on multiple levels.
Yeah, I had a guy for a couple of years. He was my first therapist, so I didn't know what to expect out of therapy. And I would talk to my wife, and she'd tell me, oh well, I was talking to my therapist about this, and she said that, and I'm like, oh, your therapist talks? She's like, yeah, they're supposed to talk to you, and I was like, oh, my guy just comes there and listens to me, and I didn't get it that he wasn't helping me; he was just kind of hanging out. So,
Yeah, just
you
collecting
know,
a paycheck.
yeah. But once I got with somebody that was good, I was like, oh, this is what therapy's like. Okay.
Yeah. So going on, you talked about the diagnosis that you got. Do you feel like getting a dual diagnosis is important to your recovery?
I think anybody who has an addiction issue should get diagnosed because I feel like while I look at addiction as a disease, I think it's symptomatic of deeper problems. Um, because really, in its essence, what addiction is it's poor coping strategies, and those poor coping strategies, stem from somewhere. There's a reason. Uh, there's a reason that we don't know how to manage things. And a lot of it, I mean, basically everything in your life that's a problem comes down to childhood trauma at some point. So it's like you have a lot of issues that need to be reconciled. I think therapy is good. And I think having a diagnosis is good. You might have, a mental health issue going on. And I mean, I know for people who are bipolar, they have twice the rate of addiction as people who don't have mental health issues. So, you know, there's a good chance.
Yeah. The one thing that I noticed, and I don't know if you noticed this, but this is for me, and I've other people have said it too, is that when we get the diagnosis, I got my diagnosis of like PTSD and like depression, anxiety, and a few other things. When I got that, I noticed that my symptoms started significantly getting worse. Was that the same for you?
Oh man, do I have a story? So I was initially diagnosed in 2014. I quit drinking in 2015. I was diagnosed as clinical depression, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, ADHD. They said I had some tendencies toward mania, but not enough to consider me bipolar. So I was being treated for depression from 2014 to 2019.
Mhm.
And it was the beginning of 2019, I got re-diagnosed as bipolar. At that point, I'm on 3 antidepressants and one mood stabilizer, one low dose mood stabilizer.
Wow.
Antidepressants with people with bipolar have the effect of causing mania because they raise your mood. They don't stabilize your mood, they raise it. So when I got out of when I got sober, I was doing great for like 3 years. I was great. What I didn't realize was that I was in a mild state of hypomania for several years. One brought on by getting sober and listening to positive podcasts and personal development stuff, but also because I was on a bunch of antidepressants. So I was in this mild state of hypomania, and then I got re-diagnosed bipolar. And the same year I got re-diagnosed bipolar, like a couple months later, my mother-in-law passed away. and it was really difficult on our family. It's still very difficult for both of us. We were very close with her. She's a great woman. Um, and then that same year, my wife had a baby, and she almost died in the hospital. And then the following year, COVID came.
Yeah.
Basically, I got diagnosed bipolar, and I didn't realize how much I was struggling with the diagnosis. And then all these events happened that were triggering me, and I slid down into this what's called a dysphoric episode, dysphoric mania, where you have these increased moods of mania, where you are irritable and you have racing thoughts and you're very productive and you sleep less and all these things. But I was also wildly depressed at the same time. Now, I didn't realize this was happening because it was like a slow descent into it. And it started in 2019. I didn't come out of it till the end of 2021. Come out of it enough to realize I was in an episode. And then it took me probably another 6 months to a year to fully come out of that. So yeah, after my diagnosis, my symptoms got worse for sure. It was it's it's still really tough now because
Yeah.
that episode was so bad, and I did a lot of terrible shit during
Yeah.
that episode. So it's yeah, it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah. It's a constant struggle. But
Well, one of the things I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, no. You're
I'm
good. Go ahead.
reformulating that thought. I'm
Go ahead.
reformulating. Um, so with that episode, what I've realized over time since then, it's been a year and a half or so since I came, a little over a year and a half since I came out. What I've realized is that I had to go through that. I had in hindsight, I can look back in my drinking career and see where I was having episodes,
Yeah.
but I was drinking, so it was like it's so masked and muddled and confused, you don't know what's happening. But this was the first time something major like that happened sober, and I've just realized that I had to have that episode. As terrible as it was, as much damage as it caused to me, and damage to my friends, my family, my employees, as much damage as it caused, it had to happen because I had to understand the weight of what I was dealing with.
Yeah.
So I had to really be able to grasp like what my illness was and what that meant. Somehow I managed to stay sober through it. I'm really thankful for that one because I don't know what would have happened if I had relapsed. But yeah, it's
Yeah, I understand. I understand. I had a situation happen on the tail end of this past year, and I definitely look back and I'm like, I don't even know how the fuck I made it through, right? But I knew the one thing is I had to stay sober, and I did, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. The shitty things, because I can now look back and say if I made it through that, I can make it through anything.
it was seriously either the day it clicked that I was in an episode or the day before it clicked, I almost relapsed. I got real close. And it was like either that same day or the next day. I was like, I'm having an episode right now. I need to get my shit together.
Yeah.
So I cut it close. I really did.
You talked about the pandemic, or you mentioned it, and this is something that I like to ask people that were in recovery prior to the pandemic and looking back. How did the pandemic affect your recovery? Because I know that everything shut down. No longer doing in person meetings. It was a little bit harder. Social distancing, masks, all that stuff. How did that affect your recovery?
Um, well, I think at the time my recovery was real strong. Um, it affected my mental health a lot more than the recovery itself because I stopped seeing my therapist for about 6 months because I didn't like the video version. I went back to video, but I didn't like it. It didn't feel right. So I stopped seeing my therapist for about 6 months. I really wasn't taking care of myself at the beginning there. But I felt okay with my sobriety. Uh, if anything, it was like I wasn't out, so I wasn't being tempted the way I normally would be.
Yeah.
I mean, my old bar is within eyesight of my shop, so it's like I look out the front door and there's my bar right there. you know? So it's
Yeah.
like I deal with that every day.
Yeah, I entered into recovery like literally 2 months before the pandemic kicked off. And then it kicked off and I was like, I was still in that sheltered mind frame where I was like, I don't want to be around anybody. So when it hit, I was like, I get to stay home and go to meetings. Cool.
Yeah.
I'll do
Yeah.
that.
I'm fine. Leave me at home. I'm usually pretty good with that.
Right. I got my video games and I got a ton of movies I can watch.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I
Good.
don't really hang out with people anyway. So,
Right. Right. So obviously, moving past that and you're still sober and you're working through everything. What does your life look like now versus then?
uh, well, I firmly believe that, I mean, I wouldn't have any of what I have now without my sobriety. I don't think I'd have my life right now. Because just real quick on that, if I play that out, if I hadn't quit drinking when I did, I would have gotten thrown out when I went home. So that would have been step one, and I would have been blowing through money on hotels. I had already started borrowing money to pay bills. So I would have been blowing through money on hotels, blown through that money. I would have been living in my tattoo shop. I wouldn't be able to see my daughters because I didn't have a place to live. Um, Everybody was quitting at work. So the rest of the staff would have quit. I eventually wouldn't be making enough money to pay the bills there. I'd end up homeless. And from there, it's a short trip to death. So I believe in a year I would have been dead if I hadn't quit when I quit. Uh, that said, if I, that said, after I quit, I got married 9 months later because we were engaged before I got sober, and I got married, and then we had a son, and we've had another son since then. I was able to buy a house, like I was able to save money, like all these things, and it's like I wouldn't have, and it's like yes, those are physical things, just things. They don't actually mean anything in the long run, but I think if nothing else, I wouldn't have the self awareness about who I am.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and that's an ongoing thing, and you always question who we are, and I'm still going to question those things and still be on that constant search to know myself.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been able to even make progress with that because I had no clue who I was when I was drinking.
Yeah.
I thought I knew, but it was so far from the truth.
Yeah.
So, if anything, that's the most important thing I've gained from sobriety is just knowledge of self.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How do you reach out to people when they're suffering, and they're in the middle of their active addiction? What kind of advice do you give them?
Um, so ever since I got sober, I started being real open publicly
Mhm.
about my addiction because to me, uh, I felt like if I wasn't honest with the public, because I tattoo, I got a bunch of followers on Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I'm not honest with the public and honest with my clientele and everybody, then I have a secret. And if I have a secret, it's a hiding place.
Yeah.
And when you have a place to hide, you have a place you can get in trouble. Be doing things you shouldn't be doing. So I saw it as be open. So I was open about my addiction, open about my mental health. And that's when I would start having people like comment on things or message me saying that those messages and the things I said helped. And I've kind of left myself open for people. So I've talked to a lot of people over the years, but I've left myself open and I've had people reach out to me, when they're having struggles, and I try to talk to them as much as I can, try to encourage them and talk them through it. Anybody that's struggling with any kind of like alcohol or benzos, I really encourage them. I mean, I encourage anybody to get into a program if they can, like, but anybody struggling with alcohol or benzos, I tell them like get to a hospital, you know, because that's deadly. So
Yeah.
and I tell people like get therapy, get a diagnosis, start going to meetings. Like even if you don't agree 100% with 12-step programs, because I don't go to a 12-step. I went for a year and then I stopped.
Yeah.
Um, but it helped me tremendously at the time because it gave me a safe place.
Yeah.
So I tell people to get involved with things, and I just keep open. That's the biggest thing I think I've done to be able to keep open. And the fact that I've had people reach out and tell me that I either encouraged or helped them to get sober is more than enough payment to me. Like
Yeah.
that means the world to me. That I was able to help anybody. You know.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, I feel like my words have been helpful.
It's crazy how we defeat the stigma, right? Every single day when we open up and we talk and we're honest and vulnerable, right? Because for the longest time, and I don't know if you've encountered this, but like as a man, it's hard to talk about those things, right? Because we feel like we're going to be looked down upon or told that we're weak. But just given that, open and honesty and vulnerability really gives people the platform or the ability to say, "Hey, I felt that way before, or I'm feeling that way now." Is that kind of where you see it at?
Yeah, I mean, it's there. You're right. There's a ton of stigma about addiction and about mental health, and people don't like to talk about those things. They're like off, the taboo topics. But so many people deal with both that they're conversations that need to be had. And you're right. As a man, like we are, especially I don't know how old you are. I'm 44. Um, being raised, especially like back in the 80s, you're taught to suck it up. Just suck it up, man up, stop being a baby, and that's how you're expected to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And it's really damaging as you get older. I mean, because there's people have this thing where they think that masculinity doesn't have room for sensitivity and doesn't have room for vulnerability. When, if you ask me, like they're two of the
Oh.
we back.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back.
Sorry.
That's
I
all
was
right.
saying, uh, vulnerability and sensitivity. Like people think they don't have a place in masculinity, but I think that they're two of the hallmarks of being a man. Like you have to, because you're trying to raise people, you're trying to take care of people. Like if you're a man, like stereotypically, you're trying to take care of your family. Um, so really, what means taking care of somebody? What does that mean? It means that you're helping them to be a healthy and better person, like and function properly. Like I got little kids, like I have to try to raise them to function. And I mean, I have a lot of mental health issues, and so it's like I worry about my kids. Like, are they going to have issues? And I want to help give them the tools to manage them early on. And it's like that requires sensitivity, that requires empathy, and I think the more people, break that stigma by talking openly, the better off society will be as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we shut down shop, um, I want to ask, what advice would you give to somebody that's struggling and an active addiction or early recovery, and they're like, man, I don't know if this shit's for me? What would you give to them?
I mean, first off, when people are struggling, a lot of times when people are struggling, it's not because they can't quit, and it's not because they don't want to quit. It's because they think there's no way out. And I think just looking at people that have done it means that there is a way out. You might not know how to do it, but there's a way out. And all you got to do is open yourself up. You got to open yourself up and be able to, you have to admit those, again, goes back to, sensitivity and, vulnerability, because that's what's going to help you through early recovery, especially is letting yourself be vulnerable, because you have to face these things that are, you know, I guess, character flaws, I guess. Um, so you have to face them. And I think that's what I usually tell people is like, you got to accept things as they are. Like, however, you don't have to like things to accept them, but you have to accept it, and then you can work on it from there. Um, and that's usually what I tell people, and just lean on the people that are there for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tim, where can we find you at?
Well, I have I have many places to reach me. Depends what you want to reach me for. When people are looking to get tattooed by me, it's my website, timpangburn.com. Anything else related to mental health or related to addiction, through my Instagram, is Tim Pangburn Speaks, which I also just started a Threads account because that's a new thing now, which is also Tim Pangburn Speaks. And on those two, that Instagram and that Threads account, I talk a lot about, you know, I talk about addiction, I talk about mental health, but I talk a lot about, just general, all-purpose, like, personal development and how we can become better people and take more control of our lives.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Tim, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for sharing your story. You're an awesome human being. You're an amazing man, amazing individual, and I'm glad to have you as a member of my family.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
And everybody, thank you guys for hanging out with us for these 45 minutes. It's been awesome. It's been great. I appreciate every single one of you, much like I appreciate Tim. So until next time, I hope you guys have a good day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Much love, y'all.